welcome everyone. As you're aware, both Villiers and Owen from Villiers from the Safari Expert and Owen from Searching for Spots spent 144 days in Umgede Hide. Hours.
I wish it was 144 days.
Hours in Umgede Hide. And we're really interested to hear how their experience went. And as you may be aware, we put out a post on our Facebooks asking for all our followers to send in some questions.
Yeah, there was a great response.
Yeah, we've had quite a few good questions come in. So yeah, we're interested to hear your answers.
Shoot away.
Yeah. Okay, so welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to have you with us. First of all, Villiers, can you explain, one of the questions was, what Umgede Hide is and why you actually chose Umgede Hide?
So the classic hide that people might know in a place like the Kruger National Park is a stilted hide. It's like a little wooden structure from which you look over a waterhole or something like this. But Umgede Hide is more like a bunker. So it's built underground and it overlooks a waterhole. And the wonderful thing about Umgede Hide is it's right next to the lodge. So it's this incredibly comfortable place from where you can photograph animals at eye level, and you can stay there for a long period of time because it's so comfortable. So yep, it's not the classic hide, it's literally something underground.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's something different, definitely. Okay. And have you ever done this before? Did you have any reservations about it? Did you find it claustrophobic? You know, it's sort of...
I certainly have sat in many underground hides before, but not for 144 hours. It's very hard to sit in many hides for a long period of time because you get so uncomfortable. But that's what makes Umgede different, the fact that you can stay there for so long. And I'm sure there will be a few more questions about the details of what it looks like inside. But that really makes all the difference. The fact that you can stay there for hours and days at the end of it without getting tired. And that just means that you have this incredible opportunity to see more than you would if you just go for short periods of time.
Yeah, I know.
But when it comes to claustrophobia, I don't know about you, Owen, but I didn't have any issues.
No, I don't battle with claustrophobia as is, but that hide's amazing. It's so spacious. That was why we were able to spend 144 hours in there so comfortably. You know, you got heaps of space to do whatever you need to do, to stretch, you can move around, you can chat. Obviously, we had the bed behind us as well, which was a big help. So I've only been to a couple underground hides, but Umgede is a place where you can spend day and night there comfortably.
Yeah, that daybed makes a big difference. The fact that there's an actual daybed at the back where you can sleep if you get a little bit tired, because obviously there's going to be fatigue.
Yeah, it's a game changer.
I mean, my next question, I was actually going to ask you, how did you sleep? I mean, did you go up to the rooms and sleep, or did you actually sleep in the hide?
Yeah, we slept in the hide. We only went upstairs for a quick shower and meal every now and then. Otherwise, we were in the hide the whole time.
So what we basically did was, the rooms are incredibly comfortable. So make no mistake, if you want to go to Antares Bush Camp and just, take your family and spend some time there, the rooms are as good as you would find in any lodge. But for us, the idea was we didn't want to miss 1 second on the hide. So we wanted to make sure that not only there was always one person keeping their eyes on the waterhole, but the other person obviously also wanted the shots if something would show up. And if I'm up in the bedroom and a lion shows up, and even if Owen calls me on a radio, there wouldn't be enough time to get there. So we basically, we took some pillows from the room and a blanket or two, and then we just took turns and we slept on this incredibly comfortable daybed, which is actually long enough to fit the both of us. And actually, speaking of which, just getting back to the claustrophobia, Owen and I are both tall gentlemen, and it's the fact that the hide's roof is so tall that I think makes a big difference, because you never feel like you have to crouch down, which is something I have experienced in a few underground hides. So kudos for you guys for actually, when you designed it, to actually make that roof tall enough, because being able to stand up straight without having to bend down makes a big difference in terms of comfort.
Yeah, well, we're both tall, so we like bending and crawling around.
So is our son.
Yeah.
Something you mentioned there sort of leads me into what my next question was going to be as well. And you were saying about, you don't want to miss out and everything. So, there's this little phrase in the industry of FOMO, your fear of missing out. One thing certainly I'm curious to know, and I think a lot of our viewers are curious to know, how did you cope with that FOMO? I mean, particularly, you've got to go and prepare food. You've got to go and have a shower. Well, I don't know if you did, but I'm glad I wasn't in the hide with you if you didn't have a shower. But how do you get over that FOMO? Because just now you turn on the hot water and you just put shampoo in your hair and you're going to get this call.
The answer is simple, and you don't get over the FOMO. So Owen was kind enough to bring two-way radios with, and what would happen is every time one of us went up to shower, make food, whatever it was, we would take the radios with. But the ironic thing is, the longer you sit in the hide, even if you see nothing, the worse it gets to go out. Because now, if you miss something now, you spend all this time waiting for that special sighting. You just cannot afford to be out. So initially I would go up for 5 to 10 minutes. The later it got, the shorter I went up because I was so scared because I knew we were due for a really special sighting. So you don't get over the FOMO. You just make sure that you're ready to drop whatever you're busy with and run back. Okay. I was ready to run down naked from the shower, wet, if you called me. And
unfortunately, it was only the two of you. Did you guys actually miss anything, or did it actually work out where you saw everything that you wanted to see?
No, we didn't miss anything. And
That's
I think
good planning.
just leading into what Villiers was saying there as well, we didn't spend much time upstairs.
Oh,
So 5, 10, max 15 minutes, we would have showered, had what we needed to eat. It actually reached a point, I had a few ready-made meals that I just ended up bringing them down. So when one of us went upstairs, it wasn't for long at all. So there were these very tiny windows when there was only one person that was upstairs. So I think we coped with that well, and we were organized enough to make sure we had the two-way radios. I think there was one occasion where a male kudu arrived when I was upstairs and full called me, but that was it. Otherwise, we never missed out on anything. But we
Becomes
were good about
addictive.
it.
oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Exactly.
Mel, you're 100% right. Like, it becomes a lifestyle because it's so comfortable. After the 6 days, you're like, I don't want to go. I want to see what happens tomorrow and the day after that. So yeah, it definitely does become addictive.
Yeah.
One of the other things, Villiers, we were away when you were there, which obviously allowed you guys the opportunity to have that privacy and things. But I remember getting a message from you on my phone one day that says, I'm starting to get cramps from sitting in my chairs. I mean, how did you get over that?
Exactly like you would on a long flight. So the cramps that I was getting was literally from sitting in a chair for too long. And make no mistake, it's not because the chair is uncomfortable. It's these really comfortable high back office chairs that you can easily sit in for hours. But remember, now we're doing it for 144 hours. So the first thing I felt is my feet started swelling. And that's exactly what happens to me when I do an international flight. So all I made sure of doing was to get up every now and again, stretch my calves, just stretch out my whole body. And then just walking up to the house every now and again would make a difference as well. So we kind of got into a little bit of a routine, and I'm quite excited because, as many of the viewers will know, I'm making a little video for the Safari Expert YouTube channel on the adventure as well. And in that, you'll actually see us stretching, sleeping, doing all these extra things. And I think if you didn't do that, you'll get to a point where, you'll get into trouble. And I had one calf cramp in the middle of the night, and Owen laughed at me because I accidentally compressed when it happened as opposed to stretched, and I just made it worse.
Okay.
But I happened to keep my voice down because I was scared I was going to chase anything away.
Suffered in silence.
Yeah, exactly.
Suck it up. Okay, Owen, the question was, how did you keep your energy levels going and the motivation to stay there and to pass the time? But I think it was just a natural, like you've been saying.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I'm more partial to the animals coming to me than me chasing after them. So Umgede was ideal for that. But I love the sense of isolation and connecting with nature. You've always got birds coming down. You've always got something to stimulate you. At night, that if something does come, it can be a very fleeting moment. So you've got to be on your game. And that was a motivation for me. You've got to stay alert, and you've got to keep paying attention in case something does come out. So I think the motivation levels are kept up by the anticipation of something happening. And then during the day, you've always got stimulation. The birds come down all the time, and then you're waiting for the animals to arrive. So Look, it is. I think you do have to be mildly insane, which we possibly both are.
Yeah, but that's very
Um,
important. That's very important. It's got to be the right kind of person.
Yeah.
I don't think it's for everybody
Yeah.
to sit for that long.
long.
I think
Yeah.
anybody would enjoy it for a day, or even for a couple of days. But there's a very specific reason I asked Owen to join me, because there's no one more patient than Owen when it comes to this sort of stuff. And you have to be able to stay focused for long periods of seeing nothing.
Did you drink lots of black coffee?
Owen drank black coffee, and he drinks it with honey, I now know. And I had my little, I have the normal mix. But, we actually, it's interesting you ask, because I realized that if you were going to drink coffee to stay awake throughout the night, it's not going to work. You're actually going to have a crash.
Yeah.
So I was quite disciplined, and I think you were as well, that we drank our coffees in the morning, and in the evening, to stay awake, we would have a big meal. So we'd have a nice big meal at the right time, and sort of, I actually was nibbling on cucumber and peppers throughout the night, as opposed to sweeties and coffee. So
That's very disciplined.
believe
Very
me,
disciplined.
we were super disciplined when it came to this. But I think, again, that's why we were successful in staying awake for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. A question for both of you from somebody. They want to know, what equipment did you use, and possibly what was your favourite lens to use in the hide?
So I was very fortunate with a friend of mine gave me his gear to use. He gave me his Canon 1DX, 600 prime f4, and 70 to 200 2.8, as well as his 200 to 400 f4. My favorite lens, I think I'd have to go with the 70 to 200, mainly because at night, when we had that special sighting, which I'm sure we'll talk about just now, that was the ideal lens. The 2.8 was great for the light and the fact that the animal was so close to me. Then I really enjoyed the 600, because when the animals were on the other side of the water, you could get that tight up portrait. We had that Villiers eagle owl that came through at the night, and because I could get a little bit closer to it and the f4 was still good with the light, that lens was ideal. So that combination for me, getting uptight shots, and then we had the Ellies during the day, which just gave me the ability to get more creative and different shots. You've got that 600, which is good for low light as well. And then the 70 to 200 was really great for the wider shots as well when the animals came down, but also the nighttime stuff, I really enjoyed that.
I think that was what was so nice, is that we had actually completely different gear. So
Yeah.
Owen had slightly longer top of the range equipment, and then I had slightly wider gear. So I had a 16 to 35 millimeter wide angle lens, the f4, which I would use to do star photographs and stuff like that with. I had a 24 to 105 f4 Canon lens, which is great for that sort of mid-range where you're photographing a herd of impalas or a herd of elephant. And then I have a 100 to 400 millimeter Canon Mark II zoom lens. And by combining all that equipment, we really were able to capture, beautiful wide shots, but also great close-ups. And I'm actually going to do another little video about what's the best lens for an underground hide. So look out for that one. But the bigger the range, the better. In other words, if you have wide stuff, it means you can do stars, and it's maybe something we'll discuss a little bit later, but Umgede Hide gives you an opportunity to actually photograph animals drinking under the stars. And to be honest, that actually was the first sort of objective of this trip, was to try and photograph elephants drinking under the stars. And even though we weren't successful with that, because obviously elephants didn't come down at night, there's that opportunity to do that. And many of the viewers would have seen the lion that I photographed drinking under the stars last year. And that's where Owen and I first got familiar and addicted to Umgede Hide and Antares. So the wide angle allows you to do that, and the opportunity because of the way that the hide faces. And then the longer your lenses, the bigger your chance of photographing close-ups, and especially the little birds. And that was amazing for me, is to see what incredible variety of birds came down right throughout the day. We saw 46 different bird species in the 6 days. And that was everything from little Melba finches and blue waxbills to magpie shrikes and buffalo weavers. And I think there was even a hummerkop that came down. And Owen mentioned we had a Villiers eagle owl one night. So the variety was breathtaking.
Yeah, I had giant kingfisher, brown hooded. We had a
also
striped
striped.
kingfisher.
Excellent.
Yeah. And without a long lens,
No.
you'll struggle to get those.
Yeah.
A Gaber actually came and landed briefly on that little shrub. So
A
yeah,
little
it was-
sparrowhawk flew past one
Yeah.
day. So yeah, it was an incredible variety.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Excellent. There's somebody else also said, you know, like you've got all this big equipment, it's expensive. Can just anyone that doesn't have perhaps all that big equipment still use Umgede Hide and photograph? I mean, I can probably say yes because I've done lots of nice photographs even with my cell phone.
Yeah. It's a very good question, Mel, because what Owen and I did was obviously the extreme. We stayed there for 6 days, you know, eyes on the water all the time with every lens under the sun. But that's not the only way to enjoy Umgede. And I really mean this when I say any nature lover will love it. Owen alluded to it earlier about the isolation and just being out there in the middle of nowhere with this incredible sense of anticipation, knowing that everything from a civet to a herd of elephants or a lion can come down, but you're also surrounded by the bird sounds and the herd of impala and the kudu, and we were lucky we even saw a giraffe coming down. So any nature lover, whether you're a photographer or not, will enjoy it and can enjoy it. In fact, if you want to go and stay there for 6 days and stay awake during the night, you can do it. Anybody can do what we did. It's just whether you've got the patience or not. And even if you don't have a fancy camera, just bring your cell phone. So you may not be able to photograph the small birds, but you can take a beautiful wide-angle shot or video clip of the elephants coming down if you're lucky enough. In fact, that's what I did a lot. I took a lot of little beautiful video clips when the herd of elephants eventually came down. A little time lapse of them sort of bathing and drinking around the waterhole. And yeah, absolutely. You certainly don't have to have top of the range to enjoy it.
I think what's most important to say with Antares and Umgede is it is about the experience. We're photographers, so there is that other element. But for me, primary is the experience. The sighting that we had of the eddies and the other sightings that we had, that's what it's about. It's about being there and connecting with nature and having the chance to experience these incredible emotions that you have, especially when you have a breeding herd of elephants come down. The photography side of things is for the photographers. If I wasn't a photographer, just taking a shot with my cell phone would be good enough to freeze that moment and feel the way I did in that moment as well. So I think that's important, is anybody's really going to thoroughly enjoy it, whether you're a photographer or not, because the experience is the most important part of it.
And believe me, panic sets in when that herd of elephant rocks up. So for those of you that don't know, it took us 6 days for the elephants to come. And obviously it's because we went at the end of the wet season, so it wasn't a particularly great time for game viewing, but we knew this, and that's why we went so long. But we knew that it was going to happen. And when it eventually happened on that second to last morning and these elephants just rocked up, we were having coffee, not expecting it at all. Panic sets in because you get this shot of adrenaline. You don't even know which lens to pick up. So sometimes it's better actually just to have your cell phone. But it's that emotion, it's that you don't know whether you want to laugh and cry at the same moment, because what people don't always realize is when these elephants splash, the water hits you. It's that close to you. From where Ian's sitting to me, that's how close the closest elephant drank to us. It's a life-changing experience.
Yeah, no, that certainly is. I mean, I've eaten grit from the elephant splashing and getting it in my mouth. I mean,
Amazing.
You can't describe.
No, you have to be
You
there
have to experience
you have
it.
to experience it.
Yeah,
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, nice.
Well, Villiers, one of the things, both of you have spoken about all this nice fancy equipment that you guys have either got or borrowed and stuff like that, and make us a little bit jealous sometimes when we don't have the same sort of equipment. And I'm sure there'll be people who come to the Hide that don't have that. I mean, have you guys got any recommendations of where they could hire some of that sort of equipment from?
Absolutely. Ian, you're 100% right. To expect the average amateur photographer to have both a complete wide angle to photograph the stars and a 600 f4 to photograph blue waxwells with, it's just never going to happen. But you can rent equipment like that from a place like Outdoor Photo in Pretoria at a very reasonable price. In fact, if you're only going to go to Antares for a few days or maybe a week, a year, it makes total sense to rent as opposed to buy. So I'm sure you can put a little link in the description below. Go to Outdoor Photo, check out their rental department, and you can get anything from a beautiful 16 to 35 f2 wide angle lens to a 600mm f4 prime like Owen used, and that's going to cover all your bases.
Cool. It's
It's useful to
fantastic.
know, yeah.
We got onto the subject now. You're talking about elephants, and for you, I know it was probably one of the first times of seeing elephants that close, and at that sort of level as well. And you sort of alluded to the fact that the whole point of this exercise was to try and get those elephants under the stars to sort of replicate your lion photo, which everybody still talks about that. I've talked to him. So I'm assuming obviously those elephants were your main focus and stuff, and it's there's always that anticipation. And just to let everybody know, the day after Villiers and Owen left, I went back up to the hide, and sure enough, what turned up at night was the elephants. So it's just the luck of the game. But yeah, I still want to know from you, Owen. The first time it happened to me, it was just amazing. But how can you describe those emotions that must have gone through you on that Tuesday morning?
It's humbling. I think that's really the best word that I could come up with. To see that breeding herd and how close they are as a unit, and the babies, the calves walking in amongst the legs and trying to find a spot to drink, and one of them actually hadn't got full control of its trunk yet. You can almost feel the wisdom emanating off them. I always get the sense with elephants that they know so much more than we do. So for me, seeing how close they were as a herd, that like the compassion and the wisdom that comes off them, and then they're these giant animals. You're sitting there meters away from giants while they're drinking. I think that for me, it's probably the most humbling experience I've ever had in my life. And from the moment that Phil spotted one of the females and she rumbled to the herd, it's almost like they saw each other at the same time. She just let them know, and they cautiously came up and then completely relaxed with us there. That's it. As Phil said earlier, it's a life-changing experience. And Mal, you said you have to be there to experience it. You could never properly portray what it's like in that moment.
And I think something that I can just add here, something that you don't experience on a game drive, or very seldom experience on a game drive, that you do in an underground hide. Because you're in one spot and you're waiting for the animals to come to you, it's usually a surprise. In other words, you sit there and eventually you're just chatting and just enjoying being out there, but you've been sitting here for 4 hours and not much has happened. And then suddenly something just appears. When we went there for the first time, we did hear the lions roaring in the distance, so we knew there was a chance, but we never knew whether and when they would come down. But when they finally appeared, like I said, it's an adrenaline rush. And for me, it's that anticipation with the eventual reward that it's almost unbeatable. So you have to have patience, and you get these incredible shots of surprise and reward that, for me, there's nothing that beats it. That's where the addiction comes in.
Yeah.
It's what's going to be the next thing that surprises
coming around
you.
the corner.
Exactly.
Yeah, and those elephants as well. You think something that big, you're going to hear them coming, but they can just all of a sudden appear.
Yeah.
And there's no warning, and then it's like.
On our first night, we had a civet come up. Civet wasn't even on our radar. We chatted and we were like, I wonder what we're going to see over the next 6 days. And we did not even mention civet. I've never taken a civet photo. You've never taken a civet photo. And here we were able to get these beautiful, incredible BBC Planet Earth-like civet footage and photos. So it was next level. That's the sort of stuff that you're not going to get on a game drive.
Yeah. One of the things that's when we designed the hide, obviously there's all sorts of things that go through our minds. Are we going to do this? Are we going to do that? And one of the decisions that we took, and it was a conscious decision, was to have shutters that were open without glass and stuff like that. So you are actually exposed to the animals, and you can hear them. Mel, you just said just now, you ate the grit from the elephants as it was splashing the water and stuff like that. So you can smell them, you can hear them, you can almost feel them. But that very first time you guys came in August last year, and those lions turned up and stuff, and now with the elephants as well. Did you guys at any stage feel intimidated, maybe scared, or anxious, or anything?
I certainly didn't. I feel 100% safe in the hide. We had on that first night, I think a lioness we measured, she drank about 2.5 meters away from us. The young male that I photographed drank on the opposite side of the opposite end of the water, which is probably about 12 meters away or so. But there's this little bit on the side, and that's usually where the animals surprise you because they kind of come around the corner. If you don't see them through the little glass window, that's where they drink. And we had a lion there, and then we had the elephants drink from there as well. But I'll be honest with you, not for one moment did I feel unsafe. The biggest fright I got in the hide was when a frog jumped on my head. So some of you that followed my Instagram stories would have seen we had frogs on the lenses, we had frogs on our head, I had frog on my video camera. We were constantly catching them and chucking them back into the water. But no, people certainly shouldn't feel scared sitting in the hide. And even when you walk back to camp, you've got a few electric strands keeping you safe to walk up and down to the hide safely at night. So again, you really did think of everything. And for us, we don't want to worry about safety. We don't want to worry about comfort and all that sort of stuff. We just want to focus on the animals and the photographs. So again, that's one of the reasons we chose Umgede specifically to stay that long. One thing that I do have to mention, though, is that there are scorpions and snakes around. So we found a puff adder on the walkway, and we found a Parabuthus thick-tailed scorpion. So for anybody that do decide to go, you've got to wear your closed shoes, or at least walk with a flashlight at night, because it's wilderness.
Yeah.
You are out in the middle of nowhere there.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to add that in as well. I mean, it's you mentioned the fact that you can access it from the camp within an electrified fenced off area, but I think it's still important for our viewers and stuff to be reminded that an electric fence is a deterrent. It's not a guarantee that it's going to stop the animal. And I've walked out of the hide at one point, and literally 3 meters the other side of the latter fence was this big male lion looking at me.
Wow.
Needless to say, I probably disappeared back inside the hide quite quickly, and he then came around and drank. And stuff. So if you are at the hide and you're wanting to walk up and down to the camp, it's a good idea to have a strong torchlight and to use it. And if you do have elephants close to the fence, maybe just be a bit clever about it and say, let me just wait for them to move off a little bit. Don't
Absolutely.
just get, what's the word?
A little bit blasé.
and
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
naive. An elephant can come through that fence, but it's more to discourage them more than anything else. But it's certainly not going to stop them. But no, that's fantastic. I mean, so for me, sitting in that hide and being able to connect with smells and sounds and stuff is so important. One of the last questions I was going to ask you on this study is, what was the most challenging aspect of that whole week?
Sleep.
Sleep.
Yeah. We got into a really good routine. The ideal time for Phil to get the star trail shots was sort of between 9 and 11:30 generally in that time frame. So I would do the graveyard shift. I think I did it sort of 5 out of the 6 days, but I would sleep in that patch from sort of 7 to midnight, and then midnight through to sunrise. So I think you have to be, if you're going to go there with a certain photograph in mind, or you're going to go there and you want to spend all night up, you've got to get yourself into a routine and make sure. The first couple nights we weren't great with sleep. It was sort of 2.5 hours here and there, and that it hit us hard. So
when you got home after that, how long did it take you to get out of that routine again? I'm sure Katie wasn't too impressed with you staying awake.
Yeah, as far as the routine goes, I was able to get back into my normal routine quickly, but it took me a while to recover.
Yeah.
It took me about a week to try and catch up on that sleep because, it does catch you. So I think the key for us was the fact that we got into such a good routine. We were good about that routine, and we reached a point where one guy was sleeping 4 to 5 hours at a time.
Yeah.
So it
sometimes
comes down to discipline at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know I was up there just after you guys, just on my own, and I stayed awake from about 12:30 one night for the whole night. And for the next 2 or 3 days, I was absolutely exhausted,
Yeah, discipline is the key word. Discipline is very, very important.
Talking of sleep, There's a really good question. Who snores?
It was actually old Neil Jennings that asked whether you snore. It actually was asked me. So
I think both of you, we need to know, not just one person.
So the unfortunate answer is no. Owen doesn't snore. It would have been nice to actually give him a bit of khara, but no. So I think you maybe snored once or twice, but Owen and I have spent I don't know how many days in the bush together on other trips as well. And one thing that makes it easy is the fact that he doesn't snore. But you'll have to ask him about whether I'm a bit of a snorer.
Yeah, Owen, does he snore?
There were moments where I thought there was a leopard sawing by. No, I'm kidding. Phil, you were battling a bit with your sinuses at that point. But no, neither of us are big snorers, so that just made it much easier.
Yeah, that helps a lot.
Yeah, it does, definitely. Yeah.
It can make or break a friendship. I think.
It can also make or break a relationship. So the fact that I'm still married to my wife.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah.
I think in this scenario, snoring wouldn't have been too bad because the one guy has to stay awake.
Yeah.
So if the other guy was snoring,
it
the
keeps
other
him
guy,
awake.
he's
Yeah,
gonna stay awake.
definitely,
Good point.
I suppose, yeah. Another question somebody asked on a personal note, sort of thing. What did you learn about each other? Being,
Apart from
something
black
fun,
coffee.
something,
So I actually have learned this about Owen before, but I'll say that this cemented it. Is Owen can get really angry at animals. And most people get angry at people, but you kind of give animals the benefit of the doubt. But some while ago, Owen got really angry at a rhino for chasing a leopard out of our shot, and it was quite a big surprise. And in the hide again, he would get angry at some animals for, I can't even remember exactly what it was, but it would be a herd of impala that come down and then turn around or chase away a bird or whatever it was. But Owen takes it personally when animals spoil his sighting.
viewing.
No, I'm really just pulling his leg. Owen and I have spent, like I said earlier, we spend weeks and weeks together in the bush, and I think it's the fact that we know each other so well, and not only that, but also we've got the same objective and the same sort of feeling about the bush that makes us the perfect team to do a big project like this. So I can't say that I learned much new, but it certainly cemented the fact that we'll be doing a lot more like this together in the future.
Cool. Okay.
I think, we have the same vision. So I think our goals are pretty much the same when we go out. And because of that, we're both quite disciplined in how we go about getting it. So it works well. We don't really oppose on what we want to achieve and what we want to get done. And I think that's part of why, we've had some incredible experiences. I think our knowledge in the bush helps. And because of that, and the fact that we both have the same idea in terms of what we want to achieve, we just get on. So these long trips or spending 144 hours in a hide really is easy. It's not difficult at all.
You didn't have to fight with each other as to who had the best seat in the hide.
I just said I dibs this one because there's a very specific seat that I like for the star shots. So I just said, "Hey Owen, you're in the corner," and it seemed to. He didn't actually put up any fuss over it. So
that the main objective was Phil getting that shot.
Yeah.
So he needed to be in that spot.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody asked, what was your worst and best moment? I don't know if you can answer that one. I don't know if that's something pure.
Worst I'll say the best moment definitely were the elephants coming down, because this was obviously, we had been waiting for these elephants for a few days, and just them showing up was it was the hurrah moment. So that's quite easy. But worst moment, other than my calf cramp, that's a very good question. I'm gonna pass the ball over to Owen. I don't know if there's anything specific that really stood out for you that.
Yeah, for me the worst moment was, I think it was on the
Apart
second
from
night.
leaving, obviously.
Yes.
That's the worst moment is when you actually have to pack up. It's time to go. That's true. But the second night, I think it was just after midnight. So that was the one night where I didn't do the graveyard shift. A lion started to vocalize, but contact calling meters away from us, on the road that goes past the main building. And shortly before that, an impala had started alarming. So I knew that this lion was really close. and that lion then walked around the back of the hide and continued to contact call. So there was this level of anticipation and excitement. And half an hour later, when nothing had happened, I think that was the toughest moment for me, because it was probably the closest that I was aware of a lion coming down. And, you know, I'd been up for those 5 hours.
And we pretty much heard them every
So-
night, didn't we? So there was always this anticipation.
Yeah.
But the closer you hear those calls, especially if it's a contact call, you know they're very, very close.
Yeah.
That's the closest.
I think I can relate to that. You know, in August, I think it was, when you guys were there and you got that amazing photograph, and you sent us the photo first thing in the morning. And Mel and I were like gobsmacked by this amazing photo. And I said to Villiers, I said, no, that's it. I'm going to be spending the next 24 hours in the hide with you. And I did. I sat there with Villiers, and we heard the lions calling, and there was this anticipation.
And wasn't that the morning that
And
they then walked through the camp?
I woke you at about 3 o'clock. Said, no, this lion's right here. Because like you were saying, it was calling on that road. And that build-up of adrenaline and anticipation that it's going to happen. And then 5 minutes later, he started calling, but further along the road, and you realized he actually wasn't coming in.
Yeah.
And it's such a letdown. But at the same time, it's this joy and excitement of knowing it could have happened.
Yeah.
And then the following morning after that, I came down again, because I couldn't stay awake for a second night on the trip. And I walked into the pride of 5 lions walking up towards me at the car park. And again, they just bypassed the hide.
Yeah.
So I kept missing out on these lions. And it was...
But I think it's worth mentioning that, yes, elephants are amazing. Lions coming down is amazing. And there's obviously a chance, whether you're there in the middle of the wet season when it's hot and the elephant's coming down to bath, or it's the middle of the dry season and they're all coming down to drink. But it's an underground hide. It's still, there's always going to be this, the chance that it may not happen. And I think anybody going into a place like that, you have to go knowing that you're giving yourself a chance, but it may not happen. And it's about appreciating the birds and the general game that come down, and the isolation and being out there. And when we had a big giraffe bull come down, that was so special. Almost as special as the elephants coming down, having this massive bull. First you're looking up at him like this, and then obviously he bends down and he drinks, but you can hear him drink and you can take a close-up of his mouth, and it's an incredible experience. So anybody thinking of going to these underground hides, you've got to have realistic expectations. So the longer you stay, the bigger the chance of seeing these really special sightings. But if you go shorter, you know, appreciate all the small things and the general game that come down as well.
I mean, there's all the lily pads. You've got insects, the dragonflies, and the butterflies.
Those what do you call those bees? Those
the little
carpenter bees.
carpenter bees were such a nice challenge to photograph them and get them sort of hovering right above the lily flowers.
I think challenge is very much the correct terminology there, because trying to get them to freeze in flight.
We had lots of time.
Right,
if we left without getting one of those shots, we certainly didn't do our job. But I can thankfully say that we did nail it.
And I think you can probably say thankfully you're no longer using slide film, it's all digital.
Oh my
so
goodness.
it's
Exactly.
become expensive.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. One of the other things, I mean, obviously, is you guys know the hide is relatively new. We've been open almost a year now. But we always want to improve. Nothing is ever perfect in life, and I'd like to know if there's anything you think we could add to the hide or change in the hide that would maybe make it even better than what it is.
I think before I answer that, I need to say I really take my hat off to you guys for the level of attention to detail that you have paid. How comfortable the hide is, the Wi-Fi, the electrical connections, the fridge. You've built something that makes it possible for people to put in long, arduous hours to get the shots that they want. So yeah, you've done a remarkable job, I think. The only suggestions really that I would make is small stuff. I think the window on the right side for me, and I think Phil differed with me a bit on this, is curtains for night. Just again, FOMO. I worry that if something does come up that right side and sees us, it might move off. So if we close it up and that animal wasn't aware, because then it's dealing with the spotlight, so it might know that something is in there, but it can't see us. I think that'll help, and perhaps the lights, in particular the light providing side light, which again is great attention to detail, that light that you put on that leadwood on the left side, if that was a bit brighter, because we reached a point where we would have been able to play with different aspects of it and turn the front lit ones off and get side light. And I think if that was a bit brighter, it would have made it easier for us, even with good gear. So yeah, that's really the only suggestions that I would make is a curtain blinding that window for nighttime, and perhaps brightening the light that provides the side light.
But that's quite a new addition as well. We put that side light on, and it's
Yeah,
just an experiment to see.
I agree with Owen on the lights, and you actually replaced the front lights quite recently and made them a little bit brighter, and that's made a significant difference. Where now with a large aperture lens, we were able to get pin sharp photos of that civet.
Yeah.
But I think over time, because it's such a wonderful place to spend at night, fine-tuning your lighting is going to play a massive role. And what you could even consider in time is to your two front-lit lights to have them on separate switches. So you could actually put one of those on and off. So if you eventually have three bright lights that you can use independently, that'll actually make a big difference. And I think that's the wonderful thing about this. It's this dynamic, evolving process.
Oh, yeah.
And the elephant's going to reshape the edge of your waterhole as they use it as a jacuzzi. And you're constantly going to be making a few changes there as well. And I think that's one other thing that probably I'm interested to see how it develops in the future is how to photograph the little birds. So there's this incredible variety of birds, but it's tricky to photograph them because of the distance and where they drink. And it's not your sort of some other photographic hides, you photographing them much closer at a perfect kind of manicured kind of edge, which this is very different to. But there might be a few ways to add perches or stones or things to then almost kind of entice the birds to drink at a very specific spot. It's tricky, but it's doable. And Owen and I were almost a little bit too scared to play around with that too much, because if you plant a perch and a lion comes and drinks there, then you've got a stick in the way. But there might be a way to eventually, and I'm 100% convinced this will happen, to have a few permanent perches where a bird can drink or sit before it drinks, give you great photographic opportunities without spoiling shots of any mammals coming down. But I also want to add on with Owen, just what you guys built there is, it's next to perfect. So
one of the projects that I'm going to try and work on in the next few months or so is creating some other spaces within the grounds of the camp where we can maybe set up almost like an artificial scenario where you can get those smaller birds drinking in a close-up shot sort of thing, so that if that is what your focus is, then
a little infinity pool or something like that. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
We've just built a new platform where people during the summer months will be able to get access to photographs nesting hornbills. They nest in a tree every year, and so we've just been busy building that. So again, it gives another space. So a lot of questions I've had coming back to me is how many spaces are there in the hide, and there's 4 photographic seats and positions. So if there's a slightly bigger group, then there's always, but where am I going to sit, and there's always going to be a little bit of possible competition. So we want to try and create some other opportunities where people can move around the camp. They're not just confined, but obviously when the elephants come down, everybody will want to be there. And
at least there's space then to photograph over each other's shoulders and so on. So again, you never feel cramped. I think that's a great idea. Us photographers, we want to photograph everything.
Well, you are a crazy bunch.
Everything from wax-bills to gigantic giraffe and elephants. Just give me a place where I can photograph them, and and we'll be happy.
Yeah. So you mentioned we had Wi-Fi and stuff in the hide, which was, and again we've had some people say it's fantastic, and other people say, oh, I wish you didn't have it and stuff. But obviously it is there. It is one of our what we consider a benefit and a perk in the hide. Did you guys make use of the Wi-Fi whilst you were
Oh,
in there?
yeah, definitely. I think it's a plus. When I first visited the Hide, I thought it was a negative, I'll be honest, because I was worried people are going to be on their phones and doing business calls and playing YouTube videos and spoiling the atmosphere. But at the end of the day, the onus is on you to either use it or not. And I think if everybody puts their phones on silent, that shouldn't be an issue at all. But if you spend long periods of time there and there's nothing drinking, it's great to quickly hop on and keep yourself busy. I could keep in contact with my wife back home. If something exciting happened, I could post it on Instagram. You could even do a little live video.
Yeah, that's
So, at the end of the day, absolutely a plus. We had uninterrupted Wi-Fi for the full 6 days without any issues. And luckily, it's not strong enough to, it's actually a weak signal, but that's good because it means you're not going to be sitting doing emails all the time and opening up websites all the time. It's not the kind of place you can easily sit and work. It's just strong enough for you to keep in contact with people back home, to post some stuff on Instagram, and to watch a YouTube video or two with your earphones on if you're trying to get through that graveyard shift. So I think it's absolutely perfect.
And I guess, one of the sort of side processes or thoughts that I had when we did that was it does give that one final opportunity for guests, if something is worrying them, that they can actually contact myself or Mel to come down and help. If they're scared in the Hide or something's gone wrong, they have got some form of communication to
Absolutely.
somebody else to come down.
Yeah,
and
no
sort
doubt.
something out.
And I think the comment you just made, that makes Wi-Fi necessary. You guys needed to do it.
yeah.
For
No, it's
that
good
reason
safety.
It gives
alone,
you
I
peace of
think.
mind.
Yeah.
It gives the clients peace
Yeah.
of mind.
Yeah.
No, it was a great added
Sure.
benefit.
And
We've certainly made use of the Wi-Fi. I've spoken to my sister in New Zealand, and
You call
and
me
video-
and you tell
on
me
live
that there are
videos.
elephants in the
Watch
Hide.
the
So
elephants,
elephants,
I
right,
actually
yeah.
wish you wouldn't use it because you keep on sending me the stuff
good
that you.
for
Well, we've got to
you
try
know?
we've got to try and encourage you to come back again.
Oh my goodness! You don't have to encourage us. We're already. We just hope that you're not fully booked for the whole of August and September because we'd love to. We are going to come back and do another week. We'll do round 2, and maybe we'll do 150 hours this time.
Oh, right.
If our wives
If your
Right,
wives
that's
are
true.
too.
Yeah.
Okay. What another question was what's like the most quintessential photo that encapsulates the Hide or a Hide experience?
Well, that
I
photo
would
that I
be
got of the
see.
lions under the stars, obviously it's going to be a photo that will always bring back fond memories. But I also, again, I'm very much a realistic when it comes to stuff like this. It's going to be very hard to recreate because Owen and I spoke about it. There are about 5 or 6 things that need to line up for you to get that shot. You need to be there at the right time of the year when, there's a good chance of something like a lion coming down to drink. The weather needs to play along, so you need cloudless night. You need to be there the right time of the month when you don't have a full moon. In that case, also the right time of the year for the Milky Way to lie in a specific position. But then you need to be awake. You need to be awake. The lion needs to come down. You need to be not only awake but in the hide. So those are the kind of shots that only the most committed, die-hard photographers are going to get. But they'll come because they want it. So my hope is that over the next few years I can add to that, and that's why I'm dying to get the elephants drinking under the stars. But to come back to your question, I don't think that that's going to be the quintessential Antares shot or Umgede shot. I think it's going to be the elephants coming during the day. There are so many wonderful photographic opportunities when a breeding herd comes in, like when we were there, where you have multiple elephants that close to you. You can photograph their feet, the underside of their feet. Owen took some amazing shots of their toenails, the tips of their trunks scooping out water, and then the beautiful wide shots just of all of them lined up. And those shots are much more recreatable, and I think therefore over time those are going to be the shots that a lot of people are not only going to want to get, but they will actually end up getting.
Cool. Okay. And somebody asked Owen, what is your favourite photo after the week in the Hide? What was your favourite one that you took?
The smile on the
The
face.
civet. The
Yeah.
civet. Yeah, I
That
think
civet
so.
shot because of the emotions that it evokes. It was such a
It's a lovely
surprise.
shot.
It happened so quickly, and that shot specifically, with it actually looking at me and getting its reflection, the angle was great as well. So I think the civet definitely. The elephants, however, were right up there
Yeah.
because of the experience as well, and I was able to get some more creative and different shots, which I haven't had the opportunity to do before. But I think just we were there for the elephants, so we were hoping for it to happen, whereas the civet was out of nowhere, it just emerged from the darkness. And I didn't have much time to react.
No,
It was
it's
a very,
It would drink
Yeah.
for 30 seconds. Every night it would come, but you've got 30 seconds, 30 seconds, and you've got to nail it.
yeah. So I'm happy to get that image and the way everything worked out with that shot. I think that was definitely the best photo.
So I assume that photo is still in the process of being submitted for our photo competition.
Yeah, we must remember to submit
Yeah.
our
Guys,
photos.
just remember to submit your
We
will
photos.
remember that.
Yeah.
So for those of you that don't know, every month there's a photographic competition. So you've got to remember to send your photos to the Antares. What's it on Instagram, or where do you tag it on Instagram?
Instagram and
Instagram or
Facebook, yeah, it's
Facebook, yeah.
Antares Photo Competition.
Yeah.
Just have to hashtag Antares Bush Camp and Umgede Hide. And
Luckily we had different lenses, so mine looks a little bit different. To yours.
The
We'll see who the
competition now.
favorite now is between
well, I mean, don't get too presumptuous, but it's it would be difficult to beat some of those photos that you guys came up with. I have to admit, it makes my life pretty difficult at the end of the day judging those. So I hand it over to the family and say, which do you think was the best?
That sounds fair enough.
But yeah, there's some great opportunities to win some discounted vouchers for your stay at the camp, or
Awesome.
even
I think it's a great
completely
initiative.
complimentary one at the end of the year.
I think it's a great initiative.
Influential photographers. What sort of which photographers perhaps have influenced you, and how did they influence you and affect your career path and thinking? Start with Owen.
Phil's influenced me. Having someone with his expertise and knowledge obviously has been a big influence on me, and having access to that expertise and knowledge. But I think Hannes Lochner, Greg du Toit, for me, what you go through, the story that is connected to that photo is a big part of the photo for me. It's not just the photograph
Yeah.
itself. So seeing what Greg went through to get the shot of the lions, and knowing what Hannes has gone through to get the photographs that he has, and it's so unique, the stuff that they've done and the experiences that they've had. So they've also been a big influence on me, and I think I'm a very patient guy by nature, but understanding what it takes to get certain photographs and to separate that experience and photograph from all the other stuff that's out there, I'd say that those three guys are probably the most influential.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that, because we actually spoke about these people in the Hide, because we have 144 hours to talk nonsense, but not that this was nonsense at all, but these are the conversations that we had. And for those of you that don't know, Greg du Toit, who's one of our most famous photographers in the country, he sat for months on end inside the water in Kenya and eventually photographed lions at eye level, literally from in the water itself. We had the luxury of sitting in one of the most comfortable underground hides, but we're essentially looking to get the same shot. And that's why we spoke about Greg. And Greg has this ability to just make even the most ordinary scene look amazing. So from a creativity point of view, he's just next level, no matter what you put in front of him. And Hannes Lochner, that Owen mentioned, Hannes lived in the Kalahari Desert for 4 or 5 years, going out every single night to photograph leopards and other animals. But what Hannes is extremely good at is conceptualizing photographs. And it's that conceptualization that we don't often have the luxury of doing when we're on a game drive, because you kind of photograph what you get. Whereas at Umgede, I had this incredible, it was just such a great experience conceptualizing a shot of elephants drinking under star trails. Where else can I do it? I just don't know of another place where I can do it. And that's why we spoke about guys like Hannes and how he would go back over and over and over to photograph the moon rising behind a leopard with her cubs, or whatever it might be. And even though I didn't get my elephants under the star trails, I got the star trails. So guess what? If I go back and the elephants are there drinking, I'm going to get that shot. So another photographer that has really inspired me lately is Mark Dumbleton, who is also a local landscape photographer, excellent wildlife photographer as well. But Mark specializes in landscape photographs and photographing the Milky Way and star shots. So he goes to places like Kubu Island in Botswana and the Drakensberg Mountains, and takes these quite technical nightscape shots. And Mark's actually joining me at Antares at the end of this week, and we're going to try and find some new other opportunities for star shots, and also the ones that I've conceptualized already. And maybe Mark will even be able to help me perfect it even more. And teaming up with guys like Mark, eventually it's going to allow us to get the absolute best out of Umgede Hide and Antares as a destination in the whole, where we can obviously go on game drives as well, to get these, I'm talking shots like the lion drinking under the Milky Way, that it's just jaw-dropping shots that you think to yourself, where on earth are you going to, or how on earth are you going to recreate these shots? And it's by being inspired by guys like Greg, Hannes, and Mark, that we are able to get those shots ourselves.
So I take it there's not going to be too many hard feelings if Mark turns up on Friday night and gets it on his first
So
night.
I was saying to Owen, either to Owen or my wife Tabby earlier, that if Mark and I do get these elephants drinking under the stars, I'm going to have to knock his camera over or something like that when it happens. Or at least say to him, hey, I'm posting this photograph first. But no, it's been such a joy having the opportunity to conceptualize a shot and knowing there's a chance of getting it. Even though it didn't happen on this first trip, or at least it was my second trip, but this first big stint, I know I'm going to get it. I know for a fact I'm going to get it. And it's because we had 144 hours to practice that shot. And ask Owen, we're dialed in. We are dialed in for that shot. We know exactly how to get it. And the wonderful thing is, it's completely recreatable if you have the right equipment and the skill level. Because you're in these semi-controlled conditions. It's just the animals that need to rock up, and you'll get your shot.
I just love listening to these stories and stuff. I mean, one of the things that is obviously, you're an aspirant photographer and stuff like that. But some people want to go beyond that, and they want to become professional photographers rather than just doing it for themselves and make a living out of it. And you sort of attuned to one or two things where you have to have that commitment and you have to have that dedication to get that shot. I mean, what else do you need to do to turn it from a hobby into a career, live it?
Are you basically asking, when does a serious amateur become a pro?
Yeah, I mean, how did you make that change? I mean,
The thing is, Ian, for me, I've done it my whole life, so I actually never had to make the switch. I've been a photographer before I've been everything else. I started as a high school photographer. But I think the important thing is, for a lot of the people that will visit places like Antares and Umgede, is you don't have to be a professional. That's the whole thing, is these days the equipment's so good, and there's so many people like myself out there with online courses and teaching amateurs, that anybody can go. You don't have to be Hannes Lochner, Greg DeToy, or Villiers Steyn, or Owen Grobler, or anyone like this to get these shots. So you're very, very lucky if you can make a living out of it. But to be honest with you, it's tough because there's not a lot of money in something like wildlife photography. So you're almost better off, paying your bills, by doing your day job, and then using that money in your spare time to come to places like this, doing it without any pressure. I'm just very lucky at the moment, after having started the Safari Expert YouTube channel, that for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm playing a little bit as well. So it's for the first time, photography feels a bit like a hobby to me. But yeah, it's been such a wonderful experience. And from my side and from Owen's side, just thank you so much for the opportunity to let us use the hide for so long. It's an experience I'll never ever forget, and it's an experience that I'm definitely going to do again. And I just can't wait to see, not only from what we'll get in the future, but all the other people that we now know are going to visit Antares. There's this wonderful, there's this excitement of who's going to get the first shot of this, who's going to get the first leopard drinking during the day, who's going to get the first shot of a big herd of buffalo coming down. Will a rhino ever pitch up? So from our side, we are going to be watching with very, very close eyes, and just from the bottom of our hearts, thanks for just inviting us to be part of this, the first year of Antares. And I mean, Ian was actually kind enough to ask me for some help when he designed the hide, and I just appreciate you actually not just, and the reason I say this is because we're the people using the hide. You actually sat down and you say, what do you guys as photographers need from a photographic hide? And I appreciate that so much, because the result is a place that absolutely works 100%. So from my side, thanks so much for that.
No, well, thank you guys, and yeah, I mean, we'll just watch this space, and I'm
Yeah.
intrigued to see these photographs being put out there, and
Definitely,
the videos,
definitely.
and
I hopefully will be able to finish the
can't
video within the next couple of weeks. I thought what I would do, I would just wait for this trip with Mark to see whether we actually get these elephants under the stars. But even if we don't, there's a wonderful story to tell, and it's going to give everybody a much better idea of what spending a long period of time in the hide is all about. And hopefully today's interview would have answered, quite a few questions that people had about, what the hide is all about, and,
Yeah.
and what people can experience when
yeah,
they go there.
so we'll see if you. Well, we'll look out for this space when you come for a lot longer.
Yes.
I wanted to make one obvious statement, just for the people out there that are watching this, that it might elude them. The great thing about the underground hide is you're taking photographs from a low angle and you're seeing the animals from a low angle. I think anyone out there that's used to a normal hide, which is a little bit higher and stilted, this is a different
Yeah.
perspective altogether. So the beauty of it, not only from the photographer's aspect, but also from people to experience it, is being so low down and seeing those animals at eye level, all the giants being low down and looking up at them. And
Angle
what
is
takes it.
everything.
Yeah,
That perspective is just,
exactly.
yeah,
That's what takes it to the next level for me.
absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you very much, guys.
It's a big pleasure. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having
No,
us
well,
out. It's nice to
yeah.
actually spend a bit of time out in our own wild spaces here.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we can't wait to see what rocks up next at the hide and makes us jealous.
Well, I'll certainly be sending you some of those photographs when and as if they happen if you're not there.
Excellent. Guys, and then
you.
for those of you that are watching, make sure to go and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give it a like, spread the word, check out the Safari Expert YouTube channel as well. Owen's got a blog called Searching for Spots, and we really appreciate you following, subscribing, sharing, and leaving some comments. Ask us anything else you might have, and we'll try and answer those questions as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.